The Mayday call came through at 3:17 p.m. Both engines dead. 112 people falling from the sky. 8 minutes until impact. The tower had no solutions. Then a calm voice broke through the static, "I can see your aircraft. I can help." Nobody knew the quiet farmer's secret past. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The afternoon sun burned hot over the Nebraska farmland. Emma Rodriguez knelt beside her old tractor, her hands black with grease and oil. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't stop working. This tractor was 30 years old, and she had to fix it herself. She couldn't afford to pay someone else to do it. Emma had lived on this farm for 7 years now. 300 acres of corn and wheat stretched out in every direction. The land had belonged to her grandfather, then her father, and now it was hers. She lived alone in the small farmhouse at the edge of the property. No husband. No children. Just her and the land. Her neighbors were friendly enough, but Emma kept her distance. They knew her as the quiet woman who worked hard and never complained. They knew she woke up before sunrise every day. They knew she could fix any machine on her farm. They knew she was strong and independent. But they didn't know everything. They didn't know that before she became a farmer, Emma Rodriguez had spent 12 years in the United States Air Force. They didn't know she had flown fighter jets in 3 different war zones. They didn't know that other pilots had called her Angel, because she had a gift for bringing damaged aircraft home safely. They didn't know she had received 2 medals for bravery and had been recommended for command positions. They didn't know any of this because Emma never talked about it. 7 years ago, after her father died and left her the farm, Emma had made a decision. She was tired of war. Tired of flying missions where people died. Tired of the weight of command and responsibility. She wanted peace. She wanted a simple life where the only things that mattered were soil and rain and harvest. So she left the Air Force. She came home to Nebraska. She became a farmer. And she never looked back. At least, that's what she told herself. Emma wiped her hands on a rag and stood up. Her back ached from bending over the tractor engine. She was 38 years old, but some days she felt much older. The physical work of farming was harder than flying jets had ever been. She walked into her workshop, a large metal building next to the barn. Inside were all her tools, her equipment, and one item from her old life that she had kept, a military-grade radio receiver. Emma had told herself she kept it because it was useful for monitoring weather reports and emergency broadcasts. But deep down, she knew the real reason. Some habits were hard to break. In the Air Force, she had always listened to radio traffic. Always stayed aware of what was happening in the skies above her. Even though she didn't fly anymore, she still kept the radio on. Just in case. Just in case of what? She never asked herself that question. The radio crackled with static. Mostly it was just background noise. Local police radio. Weather updates. Sometimes small private planes passing overhead. But today, at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, Emma heard something different. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Continental Flight 447. We have dual engine failure. Both engines are out. We are descending through 16,000 feet. 112 souls on board, request immediate emergency assistance. Emma's hands froze. The wrench she was holding slipped from her fingers and hit the concrete floor with a metallic clang. She knew that voice. Not the specific person, but the tone. The carefully controlled panic of a pilot who knows he's about to die but is trying to sound professional. She had heard that voice before in combat zones. She had heard it from pilots whose planes had been hit by enemy fire. She had heard it from men and women who were seconds away from crashing. Emma ran outside and looked up at the sky. There. To the northeast, a commercial passenger jet, probably a Boeing 737, falling in a slow, terrible glide. Both engines were dark and silent. The plane wasn't falling straight down like a rock. It was gliding, which meant the pilots still had control. But without engines, it was just a very heavy glider. And eventually, gliders come down. Emma's mind started calculating automatically. The plane was at 16,000 feet. The descent rate would be about 1,500 to 2,000 feet per minute. That meant the pilots had maybe 8 or 9 minutes before they hit the ground. 8 minutes for 112 people to live or die. Emma looked around her farm. Her wheat field had been harvested 3 weeks ago. The ground was flat, hard, and dry. The field was 3,600 feet long and perfectly straight. Could a commercial jet land there? The rational part of her mind said no. Passenger jets landed on concrete runways at airports with emergency equipment standing by. They didn't land in farm fields in the middle of Nebraska. But the pilot part of her mind, the part that had flown 2,000 combat hours and had landed damaged aircraft in impossible places, that part of her mind said, maybe. Maybe if the pilots were good enough. Maybe if someone talked them through it. Maybe if someone who understood aircraft and physics and landing calculations helped them. Emma pulled out her cell phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? This is Emma Rodriguez. I'm a farmer 28 miles south of Lincoln. There's a passenger jet with engine failure overhead. They're not going to make it to any airport. I need you to connect me to Lincoln Air Traffic Control immediately. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. I am calm. I'm also a former Air Force pilot. That plane has about 7 minutes before it crashes. Connect me to air traffic control now. Something in Emma's voice made the dispatcher act. Hold please. 30 seconds of silence. Then a different voice, male, professional. This is Lincoln Approach Control, Supervisor Station. Who am I speaking with? My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm a farmer on Route 77, approximately 28 miles south of your position. I have visual contact with Continental Flight 447. They are not going to make it to any airport. I have a harvested wheat field that might work as an emergency landing site. And I have experience that might help. Ma'am, what kind of experience? 12 years Air Force. Fighter pilot, call sign Angel. I flew F-16s in 3 combat deployments. I've made over 300 combat landings, including several emergency landings in non-standard locations. Sir, we don't have time to debate this. That plane has maybe 6 minutes left. I can see it from my position. I know my field. And I know how to talk a pilot through a difficult landing. Put me in contact with that flight crew. There was a pause. Emma could hear voices in the background. Someone was making a decision. Stand by, Ms. Rodriguez. More voices, more discussions. Then, Ms. Rodriguez, this is Control Supervisor Martin Hayes. I just confirmed your service record with Air Force Personnel Database. Your record is impressive. Stand by while we contact the flight. Emma watched the jet descending. It was lower now. Maybe 12,000 feet. Time was running out. Her radio crackled again. Continental 447, this is Lincoln Approach. We have a possible emergency landing option. There is a former military pilot on the ground at your 2 o'clock position. She has visual contact with your aircraft and is offering guidance to an emergency landing field. Do you want this option? The response came immediately. Lincoln Approach, affirmative. We will take any option that isn't a crater. Who is the pilot? Former Air Force, call sign Angel. She's standing by on emergency frequency 121.5. Emma heard the sharp intake of breath even through the radio static. Angel? The Angel from the 23rd Fighter Squadron? That's what her record says. Lincoln approach, yes, we want that option. Switching to 121.5 now. Emma grabbed her handheld aviation radio and switched to the emergency frequency. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. This was the moment. Once she started talking to that pilot, she was responsible. If this went wrong, if people died following her instructions, she would carry that weight forever. But if she did nothing, they would definitely die. She pressed the transmit button. Continental 447, this is Angel. I have visual on your aircraft. Do you copy? 3 seconds of silence. Then, Angel, this is Captain Robert Hayes. I copy you loud and clear. Please tell me you have good news. Emma recognized something in his voice now. Not just fear. But also hope. That was good. Hope would keep him focused. Captain Hayes, I have a harvested wheat field, 3,600 feet long, flat and firm. I can guide you in, but you need to trust me completely and follow every instruction exactly. Can you do that? Ma'am, I heard stories about Angel when I was in training. If you're really her, then yes, I will trust you with my life and the lives of everyone on this plane. Good. First, I need information. What's your current altitude? Passing through 11,500 feet. Descent rate is approximately 1,800 feet per minute. Emma did the math. 6 minutes. Maybe 7 if they were lucky. How many people on board? 107 passengers and 5 crew. Total of 112 souls. Okay. What's your aircraft type? Boeing 737-800. And your weight? We were light on fuel because we were near the end of our flight. Approximately 125,000 pounds. Emma's mind was already calculating. Weight, speed, landing distance, surface friction of wheat stubble versus concrete. Captain, what's your experience level? 22 years flying commercial. 14,000 flight hours. But I've never landed on anything except a runway. That's okay. I'm going to help you. Now, look at your 2 o'clock position. Do you see a large rectangular field? Harvested wheat, very flat. I see it. It looks small. It's 3,600 feet. Your aircraft normally needs about 3,000 feet on a concrete runway. The wheat stubble will create more friction than concrete, which will help us stop. We have enough room. Do you trust me? A pause. Emma could imagine him looking at that field, calculating whether it was possible. I trust you. Good. Now I need you to turn to heading 270 degrees. That will line you up with my field, and you'll be landing into the wind, which will help. Turning to 270 degrees. Emma watched the jet bank slowly to the left. The pilot was good. The turn was smooth and controlled, not wasting any altitude. What's your current altitude? 9,000 feet. 5 minutes. Okay, Captain Hayes. At 8,000 feet, I want you to begin configuring for landing. Lower your landing gear. Extend flaps to position 15. Do you understand? Understood, but Angel, lowering the gear and extending flaps will increase drag. We'll descend faster. I know. But you need to commit to this landing now. There's no going around. No second chances. We do this once, and we do it right. You need to be fully configured with enough altitude to make corrections if needed. Another pause. Then, roger that. Committing now. Emma heard the change in background noise as the landing gear deployed. The aerodynamics of the aircraft shifted. The plane was committed now. Altitude 8,000 feet. Gear down and locked. Flaps at 15. Perfect. What's your airspeed? 170 knots. That's good. Now, Captain, I need to brief you on the terrain. At the east end of my field, there's a tree line. You need to clear those trees by at least 100 feet. The field itself is completely flat. I know because I've farmed it for 7 years. At the west end, there's another tree line. That's where we need to stop. How much room do we have? 3,600 feet from the east tree line to the west tree line. Your touchdown point should be about 200 feet past the east trees. That gives you 3,400 feet of rollout. It's going to be tight, but it will work. Angel, I need to know something. Have you ever talked down a 737 before? Emma smiled grimly. No. But I've landed an F-16 on a highway in Iraq with battle damage and 1 engine. I've put aircraft down in places they were never designed to land. The principles are the same. Physics doesn't change. You have wings, you have weight, you have drag, and you have my field. We can make this work. Altitude 6,000 feet. 3 minutes. Captain, I want you to tell me about your passengers. What? Why? Because right now you're flying on instruments and training. I need you to remember you're flying for people. Real people with real lives and families. Tell me about them. A pause. Then Captain Hayes' voice became softer. Row 14, Seat A. There's a woman named Michelle Parker. She's 8 months pregnant. I talked to her during boarding. She's going home to Kansas City for her baby shower. Row 23, Seat C and D. An elderly couple, maybe in their 70s. I saw them holding hands during takeoff. They've probably been married 50 years. Row 8, Seat F. A little girl traveling alone, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She has a stuffed rabbit. She looked so small sitting there by herself. Row 19, Seat B. A young man in military uniform. Army, I think. Probably heading home on leave. Emma felt her throat tighten, but she pushed the emotion down. Then we're going to make sure Michelle makes it to her baby shower. We're going to make sure that couple stays together. We're going to make sure that little girl gets to her destination. And we're going to make sure that soldier gets home. Understood? Understood. What's your altitude? 4,000 feet. 2 minutes. Emma started jogging toward the center of her field. She needed to be in position to see the final approach. Captain, at 2,000 feet, I want you to extend flaps to position 30. That's full landing configuration. Flaps 30 at 2,000 feet. Roger. Now listen carefully. You're going to feel the urge to pull the nose up too early. The ground is going to look like it's coming up too fast. Your instincts are going to scream at you that you're descending too fast. You need to ignore those instincts. Trust your instruments. Trust me. I'm trusting you, Angel. What's your altitude? 3,000 feet. I can see your field very clearly now. I can see you standing there. I'm not leaving, Captain. I'm here until you're on the ground safe. Altitude 2,000 feet. Extending flaps to 30. 1 minute. Emma could see the plane clearly now. She could see the nose, the wings, the desperate glide toward Earth. She could see faces in some of the windows. Passengers looking down at the ground rushing up to meet them. What's your airspeed? 145 knots. Rate of descent is 1,500 feet per minute. Perfect. Hold that speed. You're doing everything exactly right. Altitude 1,000 feet. 30 seconds. You're going to cross the tree line in about 15 seconds. When you do, you'll feel ground effect. The plane will want to float. Let it. Use every inch of that field. Altitude 500 feet, trees coming up. Stay calm. You've done this 1,000 times. This is just another landing. Altitude 300 feet, crossing the trees now. Emma held her breath. Cleared by 80 feet. Beautiful. Now, Captain, bring your nose up. Start your flare. Nice and smooth. Flaring. The 737's nose came up. The main landing gear reached down toward the earth. Then contact. The main wheels hit the wheat stubble with a tremendous bang. Dirt and wheat chaff exploded into the air. The plane bounced once, hard, then came down again. The nose gear hit a second later. Brakes. Maximum brakes. Stand on them. Brakes maximum. Auto brakes engaged. The plane was decelerating, but not fast enough. The wheat stubble was creating friction, more than concrete would, but the plane was still moving too fast. Emma watched in horror as her field disappeared beneath the jet. 1,000 feet. 2,000 feet. 3,000 feet. The tree line at the west end was coming up fast. Too fast. We're not stopping. Captain Hayes' voice was tight with fear. Still doing 60 knots. Then Emma saw it. Something she had forgotten about. At the far west end of her field, there was a slight upward slope. Maybe 3 degrees, barely noticeable when you walked across it. But at 60 knots, 3 degrees was significant. The nose will hit the slope. The upward angle added extra resistance. The plane slowed dramatically. 50 knots. 40 knots. 30 knots. It stopped 120 feet from the trees. Complete silence on the radio. Emma was already running, sprinting across her field toward the aircraft. The emergency exits burst open. Yellow evacuation slides deployed from both sides of the aircraft. Then people started coming out. They slid down one by one, stumbling onto the dirt, collapsing onto the ground. Some were crying. Some were laughing hysterically. Some just sat in the wheat stubble, unable to process what had just happened. Emma counted them as they emerged. 10.20.30.40. Flight attendants were helping people down the slides, maintaining order even though they must have been terrified themselves. 50.60.70. More passengers kept coming. An elderly man helped his wife down. A mother carried a small child. The young soldier jumped down and immediately helped others behind him. 80.90.100. Finally, Captain Hayes emerged from the cockpit door. His uniform was soaked with sweat. His face was pale. His hands were shaking visibly. He slid down the evacuation slide and stood up. His eyes scanned the field until they found Emma. He walked over slowly, like a man in a dream. "Your angel," he said. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded. "I'm Emma Rodriguez. The farmer." Captain Hayes just stared at her. At her dirty overalls. At her work boots caked with mud. At the grease still under her fingernails. You just. He couldn't finish the sentence. "You did the flying, Captain. You did the hard part." "No." He shook his head. "I would have crashed. I was preparing to die. We all were. And then your voice came on the radio. And suddenly there was hope. Suddenly there was a chance." Before Emma could respond, a woman approached them. She was heavily pregnant, tears streaming down her face. "Are you the one?" the woman asked. "Are you the one who saved us?" "The captain saved you." "No." The woman cut her off. "You. I heard your voice on the speaker system." The captain turned on the cabin speakers so we could hear. "Your voice was so calm. So sure. I was writing a goodbye letter to my baby." She touched her stomach. "A letter she would never read because I thought I would never meet her. And then you saved us." The woman couldn't speak anymore. She just hugged Emma and cried. More passengers approached. The elderly couple walked up together, still holding hands. "I'm George Miller," the man said. "This is my wife, Patricia. We've been married 54 years. We were ready to die together. We'd made our peace. And then you gave us more time. How do we thank you for that?" Patricia was crying too hard to speak. She just squeezed Emma's hand. The little girl with the stuffed rabbit came next. She was so small, maybe 6 years old. Her face was streaked with tears. "Hi," Emma said gently, kneeling down. "What's your name?" "Lily." "That's a beautiful name. And who's this?" Emma pointed at the stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Hoppy. Mr. Hoppy looks very brave." Lily nodded seriously. "He was scared. I was scared too. But then the captain said a special pilot was helping us." "Was that you?" "Yes. Thank you for saving me. I want to see my grandma. She's waiting for me." Emma felt tears stinging her eyes. "Then let's make sure you get to your grandma." The young soldier in uniform approached next. He looked about 25 years old. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Luis Martinez, U.S. Army. I just completed a tour in Afghanistan. I survived a whole deployment, and I almost died on the flight home." He smiled grimly. "Thank you for making sure I actually make it home." One by one, they came. Each passenger had a story. Each one had a moment when they thought their life was over. Each one wanted to thank the woman who had refused to let them die. A businessman who had called his daughter to say goodbye. A nurse traveling to a new job. A college student going home to see her parents. A retired teacher visiting his son. 112 people. 112 lives saved. Emergency vehicles started arriving. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. Paramedics began checking the passengers for injuries. Miraculously, there were no serious injuries. Some bruises. Some minor cuts. But everyone could walk. Everyone was alive. The FAA investigators arrived an hour later. 4 vehicles and 8 investigators with cameras, measuring equipment, and clipboards. They spent hours examining everything. The plane, the field, the landing path. The tire marks in the dirt. The stressed landing gear, the bent nose wheel. The lead investigator was a man named Dr. Richard Chen. He had gray hair and serious eyes. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said after examining everything. "I've been investigating aircraft accidents for 27 years. Do you know what the survival rate is when a commercial jet tries to land off airport with no engine power?" "No, sir." "About 35%. And most of those survivors have serious injuries. What you did today, what Captain Hayes did following your instructions, this shouldn't have been possible. But it was possible. Barely. According to our calculations, this aircraft needed at least 3,500 feet to stop on this surface at the weight and speed it was traveling. You had 3,600 feet. The margin was 100 feet. That slope at the end of your field added just enough extra friction. If that slope hadn't been there, the plane would have gone into the trees." "I know. I calculated that when I offered the field." Dr. Chen stared at her. "You calculated coefficient of friction adjustments for a 3-degree slope while talking down a 737? That's what they trained me to do in the Air Force, sir. Calculate constantly. Wind speed. Weight, distance, surface friction, approach angles. It becomes automatic after enough practice." He shook his head slowly. "I need to interview you extensively. This incident will be studied for years. What you did today will be taught to pilots and air traffic controllers. You just wrote a new chapter in aviation safety." The news spread fast. By that evening, Emma's face was on every news channel. Former fighter pilot saves 112 lives. Miracle landing in Nebraska wheat field. The farmer who was really a hero. Emma's phone rang constantly. News reporters wanted interviews. The airline wanted to thank her officially. Other pilots from her old Air Force squadron called to congratulate her. But one call stood out. It came at 8:30 that evening. "Is this Angel?" The voice was female. Young, official. "This is Emma Rodriguez." "Ma'am, this is Captain Jennifer Wade, 23rd Fighter Squadron, Shaw Air Force Base. I'm currently leading a flight of 4 F-16s on a cross-country training mission. We're approximately 20 minutes from your position." Emma walked outside and looked up at the darkening sky. "Why are you calling me, Captain?" "Because our squadron commander said that Angel saved 112 lives today. And we wanted to pay our respects." Emma heard it then. The distant rumble of jet engines. 4 F-16 fighters appeared from the south, flying in perfect diamond formation. They came in low, maybe 800 feet above her farm. As they approached, all 4 aircraft simultaneously tilted their wings. Left, then right, then left again. The same salute that fighter pilots gave to honor fallen comrades. But Emma wasn't fallen. She was standing right there in her farmyard, looking up at them. The lead aircraft broke formation and pulled up into a steep vertical climb, afterburners igniting. The other 3 continued straight. It was the missing man formation, but reversed. The missing pilot had returned. Emma's vision blurred with tears. The 3 remaining F-16s pulled up together, climbing after their leader. At 10,000 feet, all 4 rolled inverted in perfect synchronization, flying upside down for 5 seconds. Another salute. Then they rolled upright, reformed into diamond formation, and flew one more pass directly over her field. Right over the spot where the 737 had landed. "Ma'am," Captain Wade's voice came through the phone. "Our squadron commander is Colonel Michael Torres. He says he flew with you in Operation Desert Storm. He says you saved his life when he took battle damage over Baghdad and you talked him through an emergency landing with hydraulic failure." Emma remembered Michael. He had been so young then, just 23 years old. "Colonel Torres says to tell you, once you're Angel, you're always Angel. The entire 23rd Fighter Squadron salutes you." The F-16s climbed higher and higher until they were just specks against the darkening sky. Then one by one, they peeled off in different directions and disappeared. Emma stood in her farmyard, watching the empty sky, listening to the fading thunder of their engines. 3 days later, a package arrived at her farm. Inside was a flight helmet. Not just any helmet. An F-16 pilot's helmet, custom-made, with her old call sign painted on the side in gold letters, Angel. The note inside was simple. To Emma, Angel Rodriguez, from the 23rd Fighter Squadron. Once you're one of us, you're always one of us. Thank you for reminding us what it means to be a pilot. And thank you for saving 112 lives. Emma put the helmet on a shelf in her workshop, right next to her old squadron photo. 4 months later, a car pulled into Emma's driveway. An Air Force staff car, dark blue with official plates. A man in uniform got out. Emma recognized him immediately. Colonel Torres. Emma Rodriguez. He smiled. Or should I say Angel? It's been a long time, Michael. 7 years. You disappeared after you retired. Stopped answering calls. Stopped coming to reunions. I wanted a quiet life. Did you find it? Emma looked at her field. At the tire tracks still faintly visible in the dirt where the 737 had landed. I did. For 7 years. Until a plane fell out of the sky. Michael laughed. That's why I'm here. The Air Force wants you back. I'm retired, Michael. I don't fly anymore. Not to fly. To teach. We want you to train the next generation of pilots. Show them what you showed Captain Hayes and his passengers. Show them that the skills we teach matter everywhere, not just in combat. I'm a farmer now. You're Angel. You proved that 4 months ago. And Angel is exactly who we need teaching our young pilots. Emma thought about Captain Hayes. About his voice moving from panic to focus to hope, about Michelle Parker and her unborn baby, about little Lily and her stuffed rabbit. About 112 people who got to go home because she remembered her training. Part-time, she said finally. I still have crops to plant and harvest. Deal. 6 weeks later, Emma stood in front of a classroom at Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. 25 young faces stared at her. Men and women in their early 20s, all training to be Air Force pilots. Emma wore her old flight suit. It still fit perfectly. My name is Emma Rodriguez, she began. In the Air Force, they called me Angel. Most of you have probably heard the news stories about what happened 4 months ago in Nebraska. Several students nodded. Today I'm going to tell you exactly what happened that day. And I'm going to explain why your training here matters. Why every calculation you learn, every procedure you memorize, every emergency scenario you practice, why all of it matters. She pulled up a photo on the screen behind her. The 737 sitting in her wheat field, covered in dirt but intact. This is Continental Flight 447. Boeing 737. Both engines failed at 16,000 feet. 112 people on board. They had about 8 minutes before they hit the ground. No airports within range. No options. The classroom was completely silent. I was in my workshop fixing a tractor when I heard the Mayday call. I could have ignored it. Could have called 911 and hoped someone else would handle it. But I had knowledge that could help. And knowledge without action is worthless. She clicked to the next slide. Audio waveforms showing her radio communications with Captain Hayes. I'm going to play you the recording of what happened. I want you to listen not just to what I said, but how I said it. Because someday, one of you might be the voice someone needs to trust with their life. She played the 8-minute recording. Her voice calm and steady, Captain Hayes' voice transforming from fear to focus. When it ended, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. Ma'am, were you scared? Terrified. I was giving instructions for a landing I'd never done before. I was responsible for 112 lives. But fear doesn't disqualify you from acting. Fear just tells you that the stakes are high. Another student spoke up. How did you know it would work? I didn't. Not for certain. But I knew the physics. I knew the math. I knew my field. And I knew that doing something gave them a chance, while doing nothing meant certain death. So I chose action. She showed them more slides. Photos of the passengers, Michelle Parker holding her newborn baby girl. Lily reunited with her grandmother. The elderly couple celebrating their 55th wedding anniversary. These people are alive because 12 years after my last combat mission, I still remembered my training. I still remembered how to calculate approach angles and landing distances. I still remembered how to stay calm under pressure. Your training doesn't expire when you leave the Air Force. It transforms. A male student raised his hand. Ma'am, what do you want us to take away from this? Emma smiled. Remember this moment. Remember why you're here. You're not just learning to fly jets. You're learning to solve problems. You're learning to stay calm when everything is falling apart. You're learning to act when action is needed. Those skills will serve you in ways you can't imagine right now. After the class, several students approached with questions. One of them, a young woman named Lieutenant Sarah Kim, stayed after the others left. Ma'am, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why did you leave the Air Force? You were a legend. You could have stayed in, commanded squadrons, maybe even made general. Emma considered the question carefully. I left because I thought I was done. I thought I'd given enough. I thought I could find peace in a simple life away from responsibility. Do you regret it? No. Because if I had stayed in, I wouldn't have been in that field when Flight 447 needed me. Everything I learned in the Air Force, every calculation, every procedure, every emergency landing, all of it came together that day. And everything I learned from farming, knowing my field, understanding the soil, recognizing that slope at the end, that mattered too. I needed both lives to save those people. Lieutenant Kim nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am, for showing us that our training matters beyond the cockpit. It always matters, Emma said. Always. On the first anniversary of the landing, Emma received an invitation. Continental Airlines was holding a ceremony at their headquarters in Houston. They wanted to honor Captain Hayes and his crew. And they wanted Emma there. Emma almost didn't go. She didn't like ceremonies or attention. But Michelle Parker had called personally. Please come, Michelle had said. I want you to meet someone very special. So Emma went. The ceremony was held in a large conference room. More than 200 people attended. All 112 passengers and crew from Flight 447 were there, along with their families. Captain Hayes gave a speech about the landing. About the terror of losing both engines. About the calm voice on the radio that gave him hope. Then he called Emma to the stage. She walked up, uncomfortable in the dress she had bought specifically for this event. Emma Rodriguez saved my life, Captain Hayes said. She saved 112 lives. And she did it because she refused to let us die. The airline wants to present her with our highest civilian honor. The CEO of Continental Airlines handed her a crystal plaque engraved with the date and the words, to Emma Angel Rodriguez, who gave 112 people a second chance at life. Emma accepted it with a quiet, thank you, and started to walk off stage. Wait, Michelle Parker called out. She stood up from her seat, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Emma, I need you to meet someone. Michelle walked to the stage and held out the baby. This is Grace Michelle Parker. Born 5 months ago. I named her Grace because that's what you showed us that day. Emma looked at the baby. Tiny fingers, peaceful sleeping face, a life that existed because 112 people had survived. Would you like to hold her? Michelle asked. Emma had never been comfortable with babies. But she took Grace Michelle Parker in her arms and felt something shift in her chest. This baby existed because of a decision Emma had made. Because she had picked up a radio instead of standing by, because she had chosen action over fear. Hello, Grace, Emma whispered. Your mom is very brave. Michelle was crying. You gave me the chance to meet my daughter. How do I thank you for that? You just did, Emma said, handing the baby back. You named her Grace. That's more than enough. The ceremony continued. More speeches, more gratitude. Lily, the little girl with the stuffed rabbit, read a letter she had written about the day her plane fell from the sky and a farmer's voice saved her. George and Patricia Miller showed Emma a photo of their family at Thanksgiving, 3 generations together because Grandma and Grandpa had survived Flight 447. Sergeant Martinez presented Emma with his Purple Heart Medal. I survived Afghanistan and I survived Flight 447. This belongs to you now. By the end, Emma's hands were full of gifts and her eyes were full of tears. Captain Hayes found her afterward in the hallway. You okay? He asked. Overwhelmed. I just did what needed to be done. You saved 112 lives. You changed 112 futures. Michelle's baby exists because of you. Lily got to grow up. George and Patricia got more time together. All the ripples spreading out from that day, you created all of that. Emma shook her head. We did that. You flew that plane. You trusted instructions that seemed impossible. I trusted Angel, Captain Hayes said. And Angel didn't let us down. 2 years after the landing, Emma's life had settled into a new rhythm. She still farmed her 300 acres. Still fixed her own equipment. Still woke before dawn to check her crops. But now, 3 times a year, she flew to Texas to teach young pilots at Shepherd Air Force Base. And once a month, she spoke at schools and community centers, telling young people that knowledge and courage could change the world. Her workshop radio still sat on the bench, always on. Old habits died hard. She still listened to the sky, just in case someone needed her. On the 2nd anniversary of the landing, a documentary crew came to film her story. They set up cameras in her wheat field. The same field where a miracle had happened. "Tell us what you were thinking when you heard the Mayday call," the interviewer asked. Emma looked at the field. The tracks were long gone, covered by new growth. But she could still see exactly where the aircraft had touched down. "I was thinking that someone had a problem I could solve. That knowledge without action is worthless. That sometimes the person who can help is wearing overalls instead of a uniform. Do you consider yourself a hero?" Emma thought about that word. Hero. "No," she said finally. "Heroes are people who act without knowing what they're doing. They're brave because they have no training. I knew exactly what I was doing. I'd trained for 12 years to do exactly that, bring aircraft down safely. This was just another mission. But you were a civilian when it happened." "No," Emma said firmly. "I was a pilot who happened to be farming. There's a difference. You don't stop being a pilot just because you stop flying. The skills stay with you. The training stays with you. The responsibility stays with you." One more question. "If it happened again tomorrow, would you do the same thing?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Yes. Every single time. Because that's what pilots do. We bring people home safely. That's the job. That never changes." That night, Emma stood in her field under the stars. The same field where 2 years ago she had guided a crippled 737 to safety. The same field where 112 people had walked away from certain death. She thought about the life she had built. Quiet. Simple, peaceful. But also meaningful. She wasn't just a farmer. She wasn't just a former pilot. She was someone who had knowledge and used it. She was someone who had seen a problem and solved it. She was someone who had refused to stand by while people died. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lieutenant Sarah Kim, one of her students from the Air Force Base. "Ma'am, had my first real emergency today. Engine fire on takeoff. Remembered what you taught us. Stayed calm, followed procedures, everyone safe. Thank you for showing me that fear is just information, not a reason to quit." Emma smiled and typed back, "You did the hard part. I just gave you the words. Proud of you." She put her phone away and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, planes were flying. Pilots were guiding passengers safely home. And if something went wrong, if engines failed or systems broke, somewhere there was a pilot like her. Someone with knowledge and courage, someone who would choose action over fear. Someone who would refuse to let people die. Angel or Emma, farmer or pilot, it didn't matter. What mattered was being ready when someone needed help. What mattered was having knowledge and using it. What mattered was refusing to stand by when you could act. Emma walked back to her workshop. She passed the F-16 helmet on her shelf. Past the photo of her old squadron, past the crystal plaque from Continental Airlines. Her radio crackled with static. Just the normal sound of the night sky. But Emma listened anyway. Just in case. Because that's what Angel did. And Angel never stopped listening. 5 years after Flight 447, Emma received a letter. It was from Lily Chen, the little girl who had been 6 years old on the plane. Dear Ms. Rodriguez. I'm 11 years old now. Yesterday I took my first flying lesson. My instructor asked me why I wanted to learn to fly. I told him about you. I told him about the day our plane fell from the sky. About how everyone thought we were going to die. About how your voice came on the radio and saved us. He asked me what I learned from that day. I told him I learned that one person with courage and knowledge can change everything. That heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear overalls and work on farms. I want to be a pilot like you when I grow up. I want to be someone who saves people. Thank you for showing me what's possible. Your friend, Lily. Emma folded the letter carefully and put it on her shelf. Next to her flight helmet, next to her squadron photo, next to the plaque from Continental Airlines, next to all the thank you cards from 112 people who had walked away from an impossible crash. Outside, the sun was setting over her wheat field. The same field where 5 years ago, a miracle had happened. The same field where 112 futures had been saved. Emma Rodriguez was just a farmer. Until she wasn't. Until a jet lost both engines. Until her voice came on the radio. And then she became something more. She became proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. She became proof that training never expires. She became proof that knowledge combined with courage can save lives. She became angel again. And once you're angel, you're always angel. Always ready. Always listening. Always willing to act when someone needs help. Because that's what heroes do. Even the ones who wear overalls and farm wheat in Nebraska.